Hey, welcome to Project Beats. My name is Joven. In this video, I'll be comparing Lemon Cymbals versus DIY E-Cymbal build. If you're new, please consider subscribing. This helps the channel a lot, and thank you all for your support. By this time, most of you probably know about the new kid on the block, which is the Lemon Cymbals. I was curious myself, so I got one to try, and now I understand why it's gaining popularity among the Edrums community. I had this for a while now, which was originally a 13-inch dual zone crash, but I used it as a hi-hat cymbal, and so far I'm impressed with its performance. I'm using a Go eDrum hi-hat controller. I just put a normal hi-hat clutch. Everything works perfect. I didn't need to adjust anything at all. And by the way, for this cymbals, the edge membrane is only half the cymbal. So it's a 180-degree edge membrane. So if you're deciding between Lemon Cymbals or deciding to DIY and build your own E-Cymbals, here is a simple comparison chart that hopefully helps someone out there in your build and buying decision. Okay, let's get this out of the way. For price comparison, the Lemon would be cheaper, especially if you don't already have a low volume cymbal lying around. The price difference will depend on where or how much you can get a low volume cymbal to build the DIY E-Cymbal. Here is a rough chart I put together with shipping to Singapore, which is where I'm at. Shipping, of course, will depend on where you are, and for parts, you should be able to consolidate the shipping cost, saving you a bit more. If that is all you want to know, then you are set. Go ahead and get the Lemon. But let's look at the chart here. Okay, so for this chart, I made three versions. So you have the 3-zone, 18-inch 3-zone right for the first one. This one, the second one would be 13-inch Lemon cymbal versus 14-inch DIY build. Because there is no 13-inch membrane if you build it DIY, as far as I know. So for the crash, we are doing 13-inch Lemon rubber crash and 16-inch crash. For this chart, it will be kind of like a similar performance and feature comparison. So they will both have 180-degree edge membrane, dual zone, or 3-zone for the ride. Let's go ahead and compare. For the Lemon, it's very easy. There's no other parts to get. You're just getting direct cost. That will be $69, which is right here. And then the shipping, for my case, to Singapore is $39. That brings it to a total of $108. This is a 3-zone ride. For parts, for the DIY, of course, you need to get all the parts you need. So that the first one will be edge. So that's 20. Trigger box, 38. Underside rubber trim, if you want to make it like this, like no rubber edge trim on the side, outside, like this one. If you haven't seen the build of this video, go ahead and check it out. I will link it in the description. So again, underside rubber trim, and then shipping will be around $20 to $30. That will be $95 to $105. If you look at it this way, they are kind of similar in price, but the key factor here, the key difference here is the low volume cymbals, which I would assume you already have if you decide to or want to go the DIY route. So that's additional cost you'd have to factor in. Moving on ahead, for the hi-hat, you would have the 13-inch Lemon would be $51, and you need a hi-hat controller. That would be $35. This is the Lemon branded one. And the shipping to me in Singapore will be $30. Total is $116. For the 2-zone hi-hat comparison, I will compare it to 14-inch, assuming all of you want a 14-inch hi-hat. So edge membrane for that 14-inch will be $18. Mini dual trigger box will be 27. The mini trigger dual zone trigger box. Rubber trim. This rubber trim will be 5 to 8 depending on where you get it. And then Go Edrum branded hi-hat controller. It's a bit more expensive. That's 53. That's the one I'm using right now. I have no complaints. I can say that it works well. I haven't tried the Lemon hi-hat controller, so there you go. Shipping will be an estimate of $20 to $30 for the parts, which brings us to 125 or 140 range. Plus a couple of things you need. Of course, the low volume cymbal. Either one piece or two piece if you want to build a proper two piece hi-hat setup. Of course, you need a way to do that. I have designed a 3D printed mod kit. All of these things I will link in the description below. So that is that for the DIY zone. Clearly, it's a bit more expensive, but that's the comparison here. 13-inch versus 16-inch, 180-degree edge membrane crash. Cost for the Lemon 51 shipping is about 17. To me here in Singapore, that would be 68.88. And then for the 16-inch crash, that's about 75 to 85 for all the parts plus shipping. That's edge membrane trigger box, dual zone trigger box. That's specific dual zone trigger box. And then underside rubber trim if you want this version. The rubber trim would be cheaper if you want to get the outer rubber trim like this. So that would also change the overall value. That would be slightly cheaper by about $10. Of course, I haven't factored in the low volume cymbals because you may already have one or you can get somewhere cheap. So that depends. You could, of course, go the budget DIY route, which is a single zone trigger for about $16 only and the rubber trim. And you are done for about $20 or $30 around there. Or even cheaper if you just get a bunch of piezo triggers and some female quarter jacks and stick it under a low volume cymbal. Or pots and pans if you like. Whatever you like to use. You may be able to do 2 to 3 or even more single zone e-cymbals for not a lot. Excluding low volume cymbals, of course, you would still need to add that to the cost. Keep in mind that piezo triggers are sensitive and sticking it directly under the cymbal means you are subjecting it to a lot of pressure, which would cause it to easily break. A solution I would suggest is to reinforce the soldering points to stretch the lifespan a little bit longer. Personally, I use glue gun right on the solder points and that has proven to extend the life of the piezo in my experience. So for the price, it will depend on what you want or what you are willing to pay for. But comparing similar functions and features, Lemon would have to take the point here. Moving on to playing performance and trigger response. The DIY cymbal build would be more or less similar to any pre-built converted low-volume e-cymbals, but definitely cheaper to build your own. I would say roughly it's the same quality and performance, but for just plain trigger response, I am personally impressed with how the Lemon performs. Really no complaints at all. For me, it performs a little bit better than the DIY e-cymbals. The performance comparison will somewhat depend on how well you put together your DIY e-cymbals. There will be a lot of factors at play here, which I am not going to talk about. But in any case, rubber cymbals would perform a bit better in terms of consistency, accuracy, and response. It's really plug and play in my experience with TD17 module. Very little fiddling with the settings. Although the difference is not night and day, and you could tweak the DIY e-cymbals to perform similarly. Simply put, there are some performance advantage with rubber cymbals. So for playing performance, another point for the Lemon cymbals. Now, for size option, here is where the DIY e-cymbals win. You don't need to wait around for Edrums manufacturer to make a cymbal size and shape you want, because you can just build one yourself. For example, the maximum 3-zone ride you can do with a DIY is 20-inch, and I don't think that exists in the rubber e-cymbal world. Another thing is you can have a regular size cymbal for your whole kit. 14-inch hat, 16 or 18-inch crash, 18 or 20-inch ride, 18 or 20-inch dual zone actual China, no problem. One of the reasons I did this setup is so I can practice anytime I want without disturbing anybody. And when I want to record a track I've been practicing on this setup, I just convert everything to acoustic, and there is very little to no adjustment because everything is mostly the exact same size and distance versus the smaller pads with an Edrums kit. So for size option, DIY would take the point. Okay, durability. For this one, it's really hard to say because it's too early for me. Although I have received feedback from one of you guys that the rubber is not that strong from hard hits, especially the edge part. I believe he is using 18-inch ride and using it as extra crash. But if I count the number of times I had to resolder the piezo trigger before learning to reinforce it, I have to give the point to the Lemon Cymbals, at least according to my personal experience. Okay, maintenance and repair. The DIY here, the DIY takes the point here. It's very easy to repair, of course, knowing what you put in. You could easily figure out what went wrong if it happens, and if something breaks, you would know how to repair it or replace parts if needed. Also, you could order extra parts ahead of time if you want. Not exactly the same for the Lemon. I'm sure you will be able to fix and repair it too if needed, although getting into the rubber cymbal wouldn't be a walk in the park, I would think. So I would give the point here to the DIY E-Cymbal. Build quality. The build quality is really not that bad for the Lemon Cymbal. It's not too heavy as well, but of course it wouldn't compare to the higher end Roland or ATV E-Cymbals. But for what it is, I think it's nicely done. It actually doesn't feel super cheap overall. On the other hand, for the DIY, the build quality would mostly depend on your DIY build skills. But for me personally, I have no complaints, so you be the judge here. Okay, for looks, for some this might be important, for others not really. This is highly subjective. It depends on your preference. But if you go to DIY, you do have a lot of options for looks. You can go wild, you can go crazy, or you can go simple. But for me, I think the B20, which is what this is, the B20 finish, really looks nice. It's not the expensive. It's not like the... I'm forgetting the other one that's really expensive. But this finish for me, it really looks nice. And for example, if I do a video with the proper lighting and all that, it kind of goes together really well. But the rubber E-Cymbal would be more function than form. But that's just me. So for looks, I would give a slight edge to the DIY build. But then again, this is very subjective. Okay, for convenience, if you don't want to think about any of this, if you don't want to have to build anything for whatever reason, and you don't want to mess with the settings in your drum module, you just want a good performing E-Cymbals for not a lot, then the Lemon takes the win here. For feel, we are talking rubber versus actual cymbals here. Playing surface, especially on the ride or the bell, or any cymbal here, the DIY low volume cymbal would take the point. Of course, they are actual cymbals, albeit slightly heavier. They do still move and feel like an actual cymbal. And for me, it's very close to the real thing versus the rubber cymbals. Which brings us to our next and last point, acoustic volume. For this one, let's do a demo. Okay, this is not a scientific test by any means, but the difference isn't that big, although the DIY seems to be a bit softer, especially if you play edge. But from that comparison, the lemon seems a bit more mellow, and the metal cymbal has that higher frequency sound, which I can imagine will bother other people, especially if they are in the same room or in the next room. I personally don't have any problems with this playing volume, and I could still play even at midnight with this setup without bothering anybody, except the misses, of course. But if you have neighbors below your unit, I wouldn't be too concerned with rubber versus metal because they are not too far off, at least for me. Rather, I'd be more concerned with impact noise, which is another topic altogether. So to sum up, everything is dependent on what your needs are and what's important to you. Although I'm really impressed with what the Lemon Cymbals achieved, and at this point, every cons of this cymbal would just be nitpicking. Honestly, it would be hard not to recommend this cymbal, although we will find out if there will be any problem after a while. I'd still keep my DIY builds, of course, but I like how this Lemon Crash cymbal is performing as a hi-hat cymbal, so I will keep it as is. I would recommend this for you guys that is just starting with your conversion build and you want a simple solution for your E-Cymbal needs, especially if you don't have any low volume cymbal lying around. This is a great product, especially for the price point. For those who are more adventurous and like to tinker, DIY conversion is a good weekend project. And just an update, this is now my current cymbal situation. I have this, this looks like a stack, but what it is I ran out of rubber trim, so I put this on here to just control the vibration so I get proper triggering. So that's that. And I also broke this cymbal already. So that's kind of like a reinforcement situation happening there. And if you can see this spot, this is the only one where the super glue failed me, so it's now on binder clips. And I am just too lazy to fix it. I will get to it at some point. And this is my 3-zone underside setup, ride cymbal. So bell is working fine, ride and crash. If you hit the crash hard. And I now have let me move back a little bit. And I now have this setup, which is extra FX crash plus trash sound right here. Let me move my mic. Trash sound right there. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cymbals, 5 drums. That will be more than what the TD17 can hold. So I made a splitter between this effect crash and the floor tom, which is right here. This is an acoustic head. This is the one that comes with a Tama case when you nest together the toms and snare in one case. So I put it here as mute, and I put an old drum pad trigger. Just for convenience, I'm doing this for the 16-inch, so I don't need to, get the drill out, and then less unscrewing of lugs for me, easier when I need to do acoustic recording. I just put this on top. It's very handy. So that's the current setup update. For you guys who did not ask for that update at all, there you have it. In terms of ordering, if for some reason you are unable to order directly from Lemon's official web store, which is the Alibaba website, there are some resellers who buy in bulk and resell them. You can find them in Facebook groups, but keep in mind, it will be more expensive, of course. Also, there are some e-cymbals from Lemon's web store in Alibaba that you are required to get a minimum of 2 pieces to order, which I don't get, but there you go. Also, I believe Go Edrums now carry some of the Lemon cymbals, so if you like to order from eBay, you can do so. What I would like to see is a cymbal pack set given at a slight discount. That would be a no-brainer, I think, right? Finally, just for a quick overview, I would rate these to be more higher mid-level category in terms of performance. They do not have that premium playing feel or fancy positional sensing, but for the money, you can't complain. They are quite good. The pad seems to be compatible with almost all modules besides the digital modules from Roland. I mean, the digital parts, of course. All right. If you are still here after all that talk, thank you so much. If you like this video, please subscribe and do let me know if I missed anything or if there's anything you'd like to see. I'll try to get to them as much as I can. Also, hi Ma. Thanks for keeping my view counts up. She watches all these uploads in my home country, even this build videos that she doesn't really understand. Thanks Ma. And thank you guys for watching and see you on the next project.